The May 20th, 2019 meeting of the Environmental Public Works Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Baroth? Here. Chairman Brew?
Here.
Ms. DeFlorio? Here. Mr. Flagler-Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Howland?
Here.
Mr. Mafucci? Here. Mr. Wilt?
Here.
Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
There is not.
Is there anyone present who has not signed up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? Seeing none. Next item, Rochelle Bell, Planning Manager, Planning and Development Department, will now give a brief overview of the 2020 through 2025 Capital Improvement Program as it pertains to the Environment and Public Works Committee. Rochelle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should all have received a copy of the County Executive's recommended 2020-2025 CIP. The Monroe County Planning Board reviewed the proposal, held a public information meeting, and prioritized budget year projects before the CIP being submitted to your honorable body. At the full legislature meeting in June, you'll set a public hearing for July, and then, upon your favorable review, vote to approve the plan. There are no funding approvals associated with taking action on this referral. There are 4 sections of the CIP pertinent to this committee: the airport and 3 divisions of the Department of Environmental Services. The airport has a large program accounting for 14% of total funding in the 6-year program. The program has 1 new project and involves relocating runway 28 landing threshold. There was some rescheduling of the overall program to accommodate 2 projects, the taxiway F rehabilitation and terminal improvements, that must be funded in 2020. FAA funding depends on shifting federal priorities, and so the airport shifts accordingly. Moving on to DES, the Pure Waters program begins on page 41 of the book. There are 10 projects in Pure Waters program this year, 2 projects at Van Laer, and they involve sizable district funding in 2020, and this was anticipated in the last CIP. And then the other thing to note is general improvements to the sanitary sewer system are funded with district cash for the first time, and they will not impact district debt service payments. The Pure Waters program accounts for almost 13% of the total capital program. The Facilities Management Program begins on page 47 of the CIP. There's 1 new project, the Hall of Justice Sallyport, with funding scheduled in 2025. Work on 111 Westfall building and the county office building were rescheduled to later years to balance more urgent needs with the Hall of Justice and Public Safety building. Those have to be funded in 2020. The facilities program accounts for 6.3% of the total capital program. And then finally, the solid waste division was added a new project this year, the Gloria Drive landfill improvements, discussed on page 53 of the CIP. Gloria Drive master planning was in the 2015 and 2016 CIP, and this is the implementation stage. The solid waste program accounts for 0.3% of the total CIP program. I'll be happy to take questions when you get to this item on your agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the April 22nd, 2019 minutes of the Environment and Public Works Committee before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk.
Referral 19-0120.
Move it, Mr. Chairman.
So moved by Legislator Wilt, seconded by Legislator DeFlorio. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, I have a few questions on the CRP. But I'm just going to start with the solid waste, where we ended up at the end of the presentation. I'm sorry, but I did not hear correctly, but apparently the project's in a stage. I'm not sure what the stage is. Could you please describe what's that about, please? Thank you.
Through the chair, so the Gloria Drive landfill. It was a landfill. And in 2015, 2016, a plan was made for how to manage the landfill in its closure years. And so now we're including funding and a project to implement that kind of work. So that's why it's the phase 2 of that program.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, when we think about future use for the landfill, could you give me a possible example of what that might include? I mean, aside from being an ex-landfill?
Through the chair, the project will include improvements to the cap on the landfill and the leachate collection system.
Okay, so long-term protection of the materials in there then?
Correct. Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, moving on to the airport changes. You mentioned that there's only one new program, and I understand, but there was some rescheduling of other projects. Could you give me a little more detail what projects were moved forward in the schedule and which projects were conversely moved backwards in the schedule? Through the chair.
Through the chair, to answer the legislator's question, one of the projects that we had in our recent discussion and meeting with the FAA in New York when we met with them back earlier in the year was Taxiway F rehabilitation and relocation. That project, the FAA seemed very interested in trying to move that forward, meaning bring it more into a 2-year to 3-year cycle versus farther out.
Okay.
We agreed with that as it's identified as a project that does need to be done on the airport property over on the southern, excuse me, the southern side of the airport. And so that's why the change was made in this CIP during our conversation with the FAA when we were reviewing our airport improvement plan, which is the ACIP. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, so that's the project that was moved forward. Which project or projects were moved backwards in the schedule to make that possible through the chair?
I'm sorry, through the chair, the master plan update was one project that was moved back from 2021 to 2025. That decision was made again in consultation with the FAA. Felt that that wasn't necessarily a priority of what the FAA would like to see at airports across the country, including the Greater Rochester International Airport. We're happy to move that back. The other project that was moved back was the airspace protection program. That one went back from 2020 back to 2024.
Through the chair of the administration, I'm reading that in my copy here, and I'm assuming that's at the top of page 27, and right now it reads as $1 million in 2021 and $1 million in 2025. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, through the chair, the airspace protection program went from 20 to 24, and then it was moved back to 21. You got the million under 21, moved to 2025. For a total of $2 million.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, and then I'm assuming through the chair that whatever's being done in 2021 is totally can be done entirely without the 2025 work following immediately thereafter. Is that correct, through the chair?
Through the chair, that is correct, yes.
Then through the chair of the administration, so the 2020 stuff moved to 2024 and then back to 2025, and then what was happening in 2024 moved up to 2021. Is that correct?
Through the chair, sorry for the confusion. It was originally budgeted in 2020 and also in 2024, and then it just got moved back a year
Okay.
for each one to 2021, and then also moved back to 2025.
That makes sense.
All were shifted over 1 year.
Okay.
Sorry for that confusion.
Thank you very much. Okay. So moving away from the airport funding, I had a question regarding the Pure Waters Division, particularly the use of cash capital. It was mentioned in the presentation that we're going to be using, quote, district cash. What is district cash, through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, district cash is simply cash from the Pure Waters District, and we use that terminology in this book just to differentiate it from county cash capital.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, am I correct to understand from reading the details of each of the projects that the first 4 projects listed are in fact the ones that are utilizing district cash? Is that correct, through the chair?
That's correct.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, I'm particularly interested in this because I've been told in past conversations that much of the valuation of the district's resources was tied up in the equipment, namely, the big tunnel, and that was why the increased rate of services that was imposed upon the Rochester Pure Waters District was never reduced because those funds were not actually really spendable. They were all within the equipment itself. Okay, I accepted that. That made sense. But now we find we have enough cash to start bonding, which we have not done before for these particular projects, and now we're doing, okay, without actually ever lowering those rates that were imposed upon the Rochester Pure Waters District customers. I find that to be rather problematic. And so my question is, for the budget year 2020, district cash being utilized, my quick calculations indicate that's somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3.5 million. Could someone tell me how much of the district cash is being utilized for this cash capitalization, cash capital, of the total that is available to the district that could be spent? Is it a small percentage, a large percentage? How much is actually being utilized?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify the legislator's initial commentary, the decision to fund the general collection system and treatment plant improvements projects on a cash basis was primarily made for financial reasons. Specifically, Mr. Chairman, each of these projects are scheduled in the CIP, as they have been in the past, annually recurring amounts of about the same dollar amount. So rather than borrow those annual dollar amounts and pay them back with interest, it just makes more financial sense to budget the use of cash for these projects and avoid the associated borrowing costs and interest. So that was the primary reason for converting these particular projects to cash funding rather than bonded funding. As opposed, in follow-up to the next part of the question, what portion of the district cash do these projects represent? I'd hate to, Mr. Chairman, hate to give an off-the-cuff answer, but we are finalizing our 2018 financial statements, and we can certainly provide a percentage calculation for the legislature probably by tomorrow's Ways and Means Committee, certainly by Tuesday, when the legislature will vote to schedule a public hearing.
I actually find that to be perfectly reasonable. I appreciate you taking the time to give an accurate answer. I appreciate that very much. Though I will have to comment through the chair to the administration that I totally agree in principle that it's better to use cash capital as opposed to bonding expenses. I just find it frustrating that we appear to do this rather selectively. We borrow all over the place in our budget. We bond just about everything. Only recently have we stopped even initiated using cash capital. And I find it particularly concerning that it occurs in the Rochester Pure Waters District, which has been paying, its customers have been paying more than I believe they should have been paying ever since that project was completed 10, 20 years ago. Now, we could disagree on that, and that's fine. But we apparently have quite a bit of cash on hand, whereas before I was told a couple years ago, no, we don't. And so I find that to be rather problematic, and I'm kind of disturbed by that, and I'm going to look into it further. But in the meantime, I would appreciate knowing what portion of the available district cash is being utilized for these bonding, for these cash capital projects. So we'll move on from there. I did have a question moving on to the secondary clarifier improvements project, which is located on page 44. And it's a simple question. The operating costs are in the negatives. It's a negative $15,000 cost per year, and I'm curious as to why that is the case.
Through the chair, the reason is because of reduction in associated repairs and maintenance costs.
Okay, so there's a reduction in repair costs. A reduction from what through the chair? From the old system?
Yeah, from what we typically had budgeted in the prior years.
Okay.
We don't need to budget so much.
Thank you. And I'm imagining through the chair of the administration that's because of the improvements in the technology and such.
You, Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the Department of Environmental Services, the Hall of Justice Sallyport project that was added in for 2025. That's on page 47. That rung a bell for me. I thought we approved that project, I want to say 2 years ago. It might have been 1 year ago. Am I wrong? It might have been last year. Do we recall when that was approved through the chair?
The Hall of Justice Sallyport was in the CIP.
Okay, I'll double check. Maybe I'm misremembering, and that could easily be, but I was just, the question was, as we approved it a couple years ago, why is it just showing up now? But if I'm misremembering, then I'll just look into it and see where that's coming from. So I'll check that out. Thank you. My final question is, in the presentation, it was mentioned that the inclusion of, well, that there were two items on this project list that were rescheduled. One was the county office building that was put back in time a little bit. What was the other one? I did not catch which one was the other one that was delayed through the chair.
Through the chair, that was 111 Westfall.
So the Westfall building
The
reconstruction?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And that's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 19-0124.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislator Howland. Discussion, Legislator DeFlorio.
Yes, through the chair to the administration, could you please provide a timeline for these projects?
Through the chair, these projects include aeration and secondary clarifiers. The test aeration project will begin construction towards the end of 2019. The remaining aeration basins will be constructed between 2021 and 2023. The secondary test clarifier will begin construction in 2019, and the remaining will be constructed between 2021 and 2026.
Thank you.
Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through you to the administration. I see that Pike is a woman-owned business. I'm excited about that. Just real quick question. How long has they had their MWB certification? Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration.
Through the chair, I'll ask purchasing when we have to go back and determine with the MWB certification and when we were in receipt of that. I think that's off the state list, but.
All right, thank you so much. And just through you, who was the other consultants that was considered through the chairman to the administration?
Through the chair, the consultants considered were Pike and LaChase.
Just through you to the administration, only two others? I'm just want to be clear.
The chair, just one other.
Oh, one other. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 19-0135.
Moved by Legislator Howland, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Any discussion? Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Yes, just through you to the administration. How long is this contract for? What is the term of this contract?
Through the chair, we expect the project to take roughly 12 months, plus or minus 2.
All right, thank you. And also, what are the undeveloped parcels of land?
We have one landlocked parcel that is it's located in Henrietta. It does not have an address.
All right. And through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, who was on the selection committee?
Through the chair, the selection committee was made up of the college's Space Planning and Management Committee, our Director of Institutional Planning.
Thank you.
I have a question for the administration. Is this a continuation of an existing contract with the Smith Group?
Through the chair, this is a brand new contract. Yes.
Okay. And per Legislator Flagler Mitchell's comments, mine are somewhat similar. This was made by the selection committee at MCC, and I noticed that the Smith Group is out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Were there any local providers considered?
Through the chair, yes. Out of 11 of the submittees, 6 were from Rochester, and an additional 3 were from New York State.
Okay. So I'm assuming that the selection committee felt unequivocally that the Smith Group was noticeably more qualified than, not to mention some of the considerations given to the dollar amount, correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on your question, you said there was 6 local and 3 state. All right, thank you. And just through you to the administration, does any of them have their MWBE certification?
Through the chair, I would have to go back and confirm that. Some of them did. The exact count, I would have to go back and double check, which I can send through Rochelle.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Legislator Bafucci.
Administration. As a follow-up question, was the decision mostly financial?
to pick an out-of-state organization?
Through the chair, it was not. The steering committee evaluated each consultant without knowing the cost. And the cost was not known until the finalists were submitted to the senior administration.
So through the chair to the administration, will this be more expensive? Because you picked the people from Michigan?
Through the chair, they were not the most expensive of the finalists.
Thank you.
Legislator Baroth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, just to follow up on the question of the landlocked parcel, is that the only parcel that's being developed here, through the chair?
Through the chair, it is in consideration. We cannot confirm that any of them will be developed as part of the project. They will all be looked at and evaluated.
Okay, so through the chair of the administration, that means there must be other parcels of land as well. What are the other parcels of land that are under consideration?
Through the chair, we have properties along Brighton-Henrietta Town Line Road.
Does that include or not include the landlocked parcel you're referring to?
Through the chair, it does not.
Okay, so through the chair of the administration, just so I'm clear, you're talking about a number of parcels on Brighton-Henrietta Town Line Road and one landlocked parcel as well. Is that the complete list?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, the landlocked parcel, where is that approximately? What's it next to? Through the chair. It doesn't have an address, but it's got to be near something.
It's along the power lines in Henrietta, somewhere in between MCC and RIT.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, I am sorry, Legislator Howland. Yes.
Could you provide maps of those properties?
Through the chair, yes, we can.
Assuming you heard the request that all the committee members be provided that map. Was another question out there? No? Okay. Seeing that there is no further discussion, all in favor of this referral, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, item carries. I think this concludes our new business. Are there any other matters to come before the committee? There being no other matters, the May 20th, 2019 meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee will be held on Monday, June 24th, 2019, at 5:45 p.m.